Hi everybody, I am Miss Karen at Adams Memorial Library. Thank you for joining me for another Bake-A-Tale program where we talk about books and a recipe to bake and a craft that you can do while you're waiting for your treat to bake. So for November, we're gonna make pumpkin bread because I love pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving, but I am not very good at making pie crust. So I always make pumpkin bread for my family's Thanksgiving. And one of these recipes is the one that I've been making for Thanksgiving dinner for a while, and the other one is a brand new one that I just learned about. So the stories I had for this month are about pumpkins. This story is called How Big Could Your Pumpkin Grow? And it's written and illustrated by Wendell Miner. You see that pumpkin? It's pretty big. So how big do you think your pumpkin could grow? Would it be as big as a lighthouse? Or as big as the Brooklyn Bridge? Maybe even the Grand Canyon? That big? Maybe. Who knows? The other story I found is called Amara's Farm. And this is Amara. Amara's Farm was written by Janae Brown Wood, and the illustrations are by Samara Hardy. And Amara is looking for pumpkins on her farm because she wants to make something with pumpkins for her family's annual autumn harvest dinner. But it's kind of hard to find pumpkins because there are so many good things growing on her farm, like persimmons and figs and okra and kiwi. So she's got to look through all of those first to find the pumpkins. So if you're going to come to the library and get your Bake-A-Tale kit for November, it is going to have recipes for two kinds of pumpkins, pumpkin bread. And actually this one, the pumpkin harvest bread, I made two ways. So there's three different kinds of pumpkin bread on this plate. Now remember, if you're going to be doing any baking, make sure there's an adult there. So always bake with an adult because it's more fun to bake with somebody else anyway. For this harvest bread, I always do the recipe the regular way with raisins and nuts and spices in it because I like all of those things. But I have some friends who don't like raisins, and I have some friends who don't like nuts, and I have some friends who don't like cinnamon. So if I knew I was going to be sharing bread with them, I would make it plain, without the nuts or raisins or spices, and it'll still be delicious that way. So I don't know if you can see on here, but these are just little loaves of bread because I used a mini baking pan. Now I like to use these littler ones because I think it's easier to share with a friend. If you make a small loaf, you can give them a whole loaf of bread. And also it doesn't take the bread as long to bake if you make it in one of these. So a regular size bread pan is generally about 9 inches by 5 inches. And the recipe says to bake the pumpkin bread for 55 minutes. If you use a smaller one, you can check it after 30 or 35 minutes. And to check it, you put a toothpick in and see if it comes out without any batter on it. If it just comes out with some crumbs, then you'll know it's baked enough. The recipe that makes one big pan, I use 4 of these smaller ones. The other bread that I made, this one that's darker, this one is called molasses pumpkin bread, and that's why it's darker because it has some brown molasses in it. And that recipe I actually found in the Amara's Farm book. Now, I just discovered this book now because when I was looking for pumpkin stories. And not only does it have great words and great pictures, but it also had a pumpkin bread recipe in the back. So it seemed perfect. So Amara is making molasses pumpkin bread. And the recipe says if you want, you can add chocolate chips and nuts to the recipe. And oh my, yes, I wanted. So I did that. So I did the regular recipe and added the chocolate chips and the nuts on top. Now, friends, I'm not going to lie to you. I had a little baking mishap with this bread because I did bake it in a big pan. And when I first took it out of the oven, the middle part wasn't quite done yet. And it kind of collapsed. And even after I put the bread back in the oven to bake some more, when it came back out, the whole loaf of bread kind of fell apart. The recipe says to bake it for between 45 and 60 minutes. When I did it in my oven, I needed more than 60 minutes worth, more than an hour's worth of baking. But that's okay. You can have baking mishaps even if you've been baking a long time, but it is okay. Even if the bread doesn't look good when you take it out of the oven, it'll still taste good, so it'll be fine. Now, have you ever worried that Thanksgiving doesn't have enough decorations? Because I have. Halloween has a lot of decorations, Christmas has a lot of decorations, but poor Thanksgiving's in the middle and there's not a lot to decorate. So, thought what we could do was make some pumpkin decorations. We're going to make paper pumpkins like this, and these ones are called pipette painted pumpkins. So if you make these kind of paper pumpkins, you can hang them up somewhere. You can make several of them and hang them up and decorate them. You can put a hole through the stem and add some string, hang them that way. You could tape them up. You can put them on your table, whatever you would like to do. When you pick up your kit, it's going to have some orange paper in, a little bit of green, a little bit of brown, so you can make your paper pumpkin. The first thing you will do is take the orange paper and cut it into strips that are 1 inch wide and different sizes going this way. But you want to make them all going vertically on the paper. So this is an 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper. You want all your strips to start out 1 inch wide and 11 inches long. When you cut them out, you can take a ruler, draw the lines, and then cut them. You can use a paper cutter, which is what I did. So if you want to come in and borrow the library's paper cutter, be my guest, because that's how I did mine. It's a little bit easier that way. Measure them, cut them out. You're going to get 8 and have 1/2 inch piece of paper left over. After you've cut your strips, so they're all 11 by 1 inch, you're going to need 7 for this. You're going to need 2 strips you keep 11 inches long. You're going to need 2 that are 9 inches long, 2 that are 7 inches long, and 1 that is 6 inches long. The 6-inch one is this one in the center. So after you've got all your papers, they're all cut to the right size. The next thing you want to do is to put them all together with the smallest one in the middle. So you take the 6-inch paper and then put a 7-inch paper on either side. And then a 9-inch paper on the other side of those. And then the longest one's the 11-inch on the end. You hold them so they're all together at one end, get it as even as you can at the top, and then staple it. You can do this with glue too if you don't have a stapler. You just need to glue each strip to the one next to it. But if you do that, I would recommend putting a clamp on it, clip it until it dries. So if you're using the stapler, just put a staple through all your 7 strips of paper. And then to do the other side, you want to open it up a little bit and find that center piece, the smallest one, and then bend the other papers around it. So they're going to curve like this a little bit. So you keep curving them in so they meet at the top. Curve them in, even it out, and then guess what? You're going to staple it again. So put them together, make it even, watch your fingers. You might need an adult to help with that part, and then staple it together. You can take a little piece of brown, make a stem, staple that on or glue it. You can take some green, and if you'd like to roll them, you can roll them around a pencil to make them curly and glue those on either side, and it'll be the tendrils, the vines from the pumpkin. So you can make as many as you want. If you have other orange paper, you can use that, or you can color paper. You can make them white if you want. You can have white pumpkins. So have fun. I kind of like these. And I think I'm going to give these ones to Miss Mary because she said she liked them too. So that's one decoration you could make. The other ones are the pipette painted pumpkins. It's a little hard to say. This might be a 2-day craft because you might want to prepare the paper first. That's what I had to do. I had to do the painting on one part one day, let that all dry, and then do the decorations on the next day. This one, I painted the background paper, and then I did the pumpkin on a different one. We're going to give you templates in your kit. So you can use the template. You can trace it on cardstock or a piece of paper, trace around it, and then when you have the outline, you can drop your paint on it. Now you can make your color 2 different ways. And the most important thing about doing this craft with the color is you have to protect your surface, because the color will seep right through the paper and it'll stain anything underneath. So make sure you put newspaper down, or plastic, even a plastic bag. I worked on a plastic bag, and so that will capture the color so it won't seep through and stain your work surface, your table or your tablecloth. We've done a number on this tablecloth, so this one might already have been stained, but I didn't want to stain it anymore. So I put plastic down first. Then get something that you can put color in. So not a good bowl, but you could use a paper cup, a glass jar. If you have these kind of plastic containers for doing crafts, you can do that. You see, a little bit of water in, just maybe this much on the bottom. And then if you have liquid watercolor at home, you can add that. Or you can do what I did and use food coloring, drops of food coloring. So I had 4 different bowls. I had one with green, one with yellow, one with red, and then one where I mixed the yellow and red food coloring together to make orange. So you take your water and then add drops of food coloring. So I did maybe 16 drops of color, but you can do whatever you like. So it makes a color that you like. It's going to look darker than it ends up on the paper. It'll lighten up when you dry. If you have more water, then the color will spread more. If you don't put as much water, then it'll stay where you put it, and then it'll dry a little bit differently. Like, here's the back of this one. See how it's kind of stayed still in the dots? This one I had less water. This one, I had some more water in it, where it all blended together. So you've drawn your picture on here, and then you can do the pumpkin this way, if you would like. This is what it'll look like after you've blended the colors together. I did that first, and then the next day I colored on this with crayon and then colored pencils. If you get a little puddle of color, you can blot it with a paper towel, but that'll make all the color blend. Or you can use the pipette that we're going to give you. The pipette is actually how you put the color on the paper. So if you've never used one before, you put the end in your liquid and you squeeze the top, and then it's hard to see, but it's right here. When you squeeze the top, it sucks this is just plain water. It sucks the water up into the pipette, and then you can squeeze it again, and you can do drop by drop, or you can squeeze it a lot, and it'll let out more water or more color. So you can drop that all over your pumpkin picture. You can blend it all together. You can mix the colors. You can do it however you like. And then after it dries, and it might take a while, maybe the next day, maybe you can start it in the morning and finish in the evening. After it's all dry, you can decorate it some more if you would like. So this one, like I said, I colored on it with crayons, all different colors, reds and oranges and yellows and some green up here. And I thought that was kind of neat, so I just left it like that. If you wanted to make smaller ones, you could leave it on the paper, or you could do one for every person who's going to come to your Thanksgiving dinner, and you could write their names on them, and then they could be place cards, so you can tell people where to sit. Or you could just put them around and add to some Thanksgiving decor. However you want to do it is great. And if you do decorate some pumpkins or bake some pumpkin bread, we would love to hear about it. You can take a picture and you can show us when you're in the library, or you can email it to kids@adamslib.org. And as I said, you can come in and get your kid at the library. You can call us and we will put one aside for you, whatever you would like. You can just come on down to the children's room and we'll have the kits ready for you. So thank you very much, friends, for joining me, and happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.